Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We are continuing with the Bikshu Gita, the song by the renunciate. We're at the part where he is beginning his renunciation career after being a most miserly, despicable Brahmana. So you may recall the previous action. What was it, last weekend? This Brahmana has a lot of wealth. We heard how Brahmanas, as an alternative occupation or supplementary occupation, are allowed to deal in agriculture, cows, milk products, because they receive so much in charity in a genuine human civilization, and they're supposed to give away in charity. But this particular Brahmana, as you may recall, was extremely stingy. He wouldn't even spend on his own family members, what to speak of himself. And his family members became very inimical to him. He wasn't even taking care of his own body. He was very miserably miserly. And gradually, he lost everything. His family members hated him even when he was rich. But then, what do you think they felt when he lost all his money? He heard how he lost his money to thieves, to agents of the government, to nature spoiling harvests, to fires burning down his property. Somehow or other, he got wiped out completely. So again, his relatives hated him when he was rich. How do you think they were feeling when he was totally financially devastated? They completely turned their back on him, disowned him. And upon his losing everything, he had some realizations. He was so pulverized, so devastated, so humiliated, ground into powder, that he began to think very deeply. And that's very good for him, because he did have some kind of devotional past. We don't get the exact details involved with time of that, but somehow or other he had some devotional training and assets way back when. And after losing everything and suffering so much, his spiritual tendencies started to come to the fore. And he began, as I said, to reflect. What has this money done to me? Only a fool would dedicate the life to accumulating wealth. The whole process brings upon you so much entanglement, complication, envy, hate, lust, and greed. I may have explained to you before, you have lotteries here in New Zealand. The ones in the USA are bigger. because it's a bigger population to foolishly buy lottery tickets. So persons are winning like $400 million US. And a few years later are cursing the day they won the lottery. Can you believe it? Because they say we can no longer tell who our real friends are. We can no longer tell, even amongst our family members, who is really favorable. One person who won hundreds of millions of dollars said, the first year after I won, I discovered I had so many long-lost relatives. Every other day, someone was knocking on my door. Hi, I'm your third cousin from thousands of miles away. We've never met, but you know, your mother was the sister of my mother's cousin or something. So, can you believe it? They cursed the day they won the money. And their children, they watched their teenage children go over the hill completely, drug addiction, and because you can't imagine the pressure it put on the teenage children, you know? They want to be socially acceptable, and so many, especially for the girls, so many guys are playing the game like, yeah, you got money. So their children were committing suicide in their teenage years. So this is what this devastated miserly Brahmana was lamenting about. He said, look, when you're alive, the money drives you crazy and brings you hell. And when you're dead, it brings you to hell. He began to condemn himself. I've wasted my whole life. We spoke his verses last weekend about how so-called beloveds and family members will give up their relationship just over a single coin. We told stories about that. As he says, they'll reject you at a moment's notice, even to the point of committing murder, just for even a small amount of money. These relatives and friends become very agitated, and their anger is inflamed. And your own relatives, your own close friends, could be your own spouse, can use money as to twist your arm. I told you this story before, how some years ago my mother told me, you know, I never revealed you before, but when your grandmother left this world, she earmarked a special fund for you for when you come home. Think about it. I said, well, what am I supposed to think about? Think about it. In other words, the money could be yours. All you have to do is come home and live a normal life. Confess to the Lord. Come home. So, you know, what am I supposed to do with the money? Just buy a house and sit in and watch TV? I'm 65, I'm almost dead. Oh, don't say that. And then she came through with her clincher, clinched the deal. You're worried about what you're going to do, but let me tell you, son, there's some nice ladies at the church, and they're on their knees praying for you. So I told her, I said, well, tell them they can keep staying on their knees praying. I very much appreciate that they're on their knees praying. So even an affectionate mother knows how to use the financial weapon to accomplish purposes. And then we've discussed how money is an energy that, unless you recognize its dynamics and how it belongs to Krishna as a supreme proprietor, that money energy can get out of control even if you just have a little bit. If you have nothing, you're always thinking, where's the money, how to get more money, need more money. Those who say they don't think about it, they're always thinking about saying we don't think about it. It becomes such a dominant factor in life. As Kadirman and Andy were saying last weekend, cost of living is rising. Everyone always thinks that they never have enough. Can always use more. And money causes rancor, causes difficulty in relationships. I remember my brother, one of my brothers, telling me how, without his knowledge, his wife signed up for a $200,000 US dollars, $200,000 loan so she could get her PhD. And in the States, education, plus, you all have your welfare state here. The US, it's either you have money or you become a criminal. Well, some say that those who have all the money are the biggest criminals. That's another thing. So she signed up for a loan for $200,000 US. She was so attached to getting her PhD. And so I said to my brother, well, what did you say? What did you do when you found out about that? He said, I had a choice. Did I want to go on being married? If that's the case, I had to shut up. If I wanted to say something, that meant divorce. So I didn't want to go on being married, so I didn't say anything. He had to swallow it. Hopefully he'll never hear this class. Although sometimes my relatives, they warn each other, watch out what you say around him. He'll say it in one of his talks somewhere in the world. Hopefully there are too many of them to listen to. But as you know, one of my sisters started listening to my lectures and then wound up becoming a bhakti yogi. In any case, this devastated miserly Brahmana is now having a new vision. His dormant spiritual characteristics are emerging amidst the catastrophe. And now he's going to speak a verse about the value of the human form of life. That's today's verse, text 22. Labdva janma mara pratyam manusyam tadvijagritam taranadrichaye swatam gananti anta shubham gatin. Labdva janma mara pratyam manusyam tadvijagritam saranadrichaye swatam gananti anta shubham gatin. Labdva janma mara pratyam manusyam tadvijagritam taranadrichaye swatam gananti anta shubham gatin. Vaishnavis. Labdva, having attained, Janma, the birth, Amara, Bhakti Pratyam, prayed for. Manusham, human, tat. And in that, Drija Agriyatam, the status of being the best of the twice born. Tat, that. And Nadritya, not appreciating. Yea, those who. Sahatam, their own best interest. Yananti, destroy. Yanti, they go. Ashubham, to an inauspicious destination. Translation: those who obtain human life, which is prayed for even by the demigods, and in that human birth become situated as first-class brahmanas, are extremely fortunate. If they disregard this important opportunity, they are certainly killing their own self-interest and thus achieve a most unfortunate end. Purport. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments as follows. Human birth is better than that of the demigods, ghosts, spirits, animals, trees, lifeless stones, and so forth, because the demigods simply enjoy celestial pleasures, and in other forms of life there is excessive suffering. It is only in human life that one deeply considers one's ultimate benefit in life. Human birth is therefore more desirable than even that of the demigods. Within human life, the position of a high-class brahmana is certainly most desirable. If a brahmana, however, gives up the devotional service of the Lord and works hard like a Shudra simply for the prestige of his community, he is certainly on the platform of material sense gratification. The special qualification of the brahmanas is the spiritual knowledge by which they recognize every living entity to be an eternal servant of the Lord. A brahmana, free from false ego, thus feels himself lower than the blade of grass and tolerantly offers respect to all living entities. All human beings, and especially the brahmanas, should avoid becoming killers of their own self-interest by neglecting Krishna consciousness, the loving service of the Lord. Such neglect paves the way for future suffering. Om Jnana-Timirandasya Jnana-Jana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The human body is prayed for even by the demigods. How could that be? You've read in Bhagavatam that the standard of material happiness experienced by the devas is thousands of times better than what is available on earth. Not twice or thrice or 5 times, but thousands of times better. And yet they want a human birth? Why? The demigods are devotees, but they're attached to material control and enjoyment. During their existence as demigods, they recognize that the goal of life is self-realization, to become fully spiritual. But it's so hard doing that as a demigod because the enjoyment is so intense. Everything is relative. Even on this third-class planet, as Prabhupada was sometimes called, there are places where people consider are very heavenly and very hellish. The demigods live in such luxury and material happiness, but they realize this is not good for our spiritual life. It's better to be born on earth as a human being, where we're not drowning so much in temporary pleasures. They pray that if they have any pious activities left in their account after their stint in the heavenly planets, can they take birth on earth as a human being, and particularly in Bharat, in India. So just think, they have it all in terms of material opulence, thousands of times beyond what you can imagine. Yet, they'd rather be human beings. Why? We already explained. Number one, the sense enjoyment of the heavenly planets is so thick that they're distracted from the ultimate goal of life. Number two, life is so much longer there compared to a human life on earth. So they're looking at the short human life on earth and thinking, you can achieve perfection so quickly, go back to Godhead so quickly. Whereas we hang around for so long in the heavenly planets, and there's such a risk of becoming blown off course, distracted, forgetting the goal of life. Therefore, we want to take birth as human beings on earth and finish up our business very quickly. What do you think? Maybe you're thinking, well, we would like to take birth into heavenly planets and enjoy and then give it up. But the demigods are thinking, we'd rather take birth on earth as a human being and get this material existence quickly over with. So everything depends on your perspective as to what is your goal of life. So the formerly miserly Brahmana is exclaiming that those who disregard the extraordinary opportunity of having a human body are killing their own self-interest, certainly. It's one of the fundamentals of bhakti, but it's amazing how people don't get it. Even some of our own practitioners, our own devotees don't get it, that the human body brings immense responsibility. It's a crossroads. You can go one way or the other. You can go up or down. And we don't realize how rarely achieved is the human body. We take it for granted. How many of you look in the mirror in the morning when you're brushing your teeth or shaving or putting on your eye makeup? How many of you think, look at this body, it's human. How rare is this? Does anyone do that? You just take it for granted. Yeah, I look pretty good. Or if you're getting older, you watch for the gray hairs and the wrinkles. Again and again, Srila Prabhupada would explain to us how rare it is to have a human body and what a golden opportunity it is. and how nature retaliates if we abuse our human body by denying its real purpose. We see that human beings at this present moment are expert at endangering the whole planet in two ways, gradually and abruptly. They're endangering the whole planet gradually through climate change. They're endangering the whole planet abruptly through the threat of nuclear warfare. This is the expertise. Isn't there already enough death going around? You don't need to invent more methods for death in the name of protecting sovereignty and security. It's said that the greatest tragedy of the 21st century, this present century, is that no one has learned from the tragedies of the 20th century. It kind of seems like disasters have to be repeated in order to stay in the human mind. It's like you all don't. You're not impacted by whatever happened in 1945 when the nuclear bombs were dropped. The impact of that is not in the forefront of your mind. It's just some vague historical item. Basically, you're not even impacted by what happened 30 years ago. Everyone is so contemporary. Living in the moment, which is full of ignorance. So it seems to be necessary for massive disasters to happen frequently so that the human consciousness retains memory of them. People don't even study history anymore, but even if they did, they can't control themselves, they make the same mistakes again. Another saying is that history is the best teacher, but she has no students. I was having a discussion with Andy last weekend. He was putting forth well, the political theorists, those who are studying the social, political, economic trends, they'll be able perhaps to give some guiding influence to society. I know about them, but who listens to them? The masses of people have become so dumbed down. It's like, according to some survey done recently in New Zealand, half of the 15-year-olds in New Zealand say they only read when they have to. But they've all got smartphones, they're on YouTube and Twitter and whatever the latest thing is. Tinder and this and that and the other. So this is how, if you are demoniacally minded, this is what you want in society. You want people dumb, and then you can scheme and scam as you like. So in this way, you see a massive wastage of the human form of life. And nature responds. As we often explain, the problem in the world is not the quantity of population, it's the quality of the population. It's very tragic and very sad to see persons destroy their own self-interest, destroy their human opportunity. So this formerly Maharishi Brahmana is lamenting about that. You have a birth that's more desirable than even that of the demigods. So you really have to think about that, because it seems the demigods have everything. So then he says, what mortal man, having achieved this human life, which is the very gateway to both heaven and liberation, would willingly become attached to that abode of worthlessness, material property? Also, the abode of worthlessness. He's seeing the whole lifespan. He's giving you a perspective of the whole lifespan. And this is so valuable. He's giving you the handles to get a grip on your life. See the whole span of your life rather than just be hypnotized by the present moment, full of passion and ignorance. So he points out, discriminating persons are able to utilize their money, their youth, and their strength to achieve perfection. That's for the discriminating person. Those who know what is the essence of life. Those who can distinguish between reality and illusion. They're properly able to utilize their money, their youth, and their strength. Just like I often hear from so many of you all, how you squandered your youth. But speak of whatever money you had, and how you spoiled your strength, doing the things everyone considers to be normal. You did that because there's no discrimination. In fact, if you try to show discrimination, people think you're crazy. Come on, get into it. Just get a life, live it. Life is not a spectator sport. Please your senses, please someone else's senses. Come on, make it happen. And so if you don't participate in that kind of so-called culture, you feel bad about yourself, and people make you feel bad about yourself. I remember I was at some family gathering of relatives on my father's side. Relatives on my mother's side were all staunch Christians. Relatives on my father's side were the opposite. So the relatives on his side were having some family meeting. They had formed a corporation, I guess you call it a trust here, in order to save money, buying cruise tickets as a group and all that kind of thing. So they were having their corporate meeting, and I think I was about 14. And I was sitting there, and of course, when they concluded their meeting of the family trust, it's time to break out the drinks. So my father was renowned for mixing super drinks. And so the the men on his side of the family, they thought they were doing me a favor. When you grow up, you'll be able to mix drinks just like your father. They're giving benediction. Srimad Bhagavatam was full of benedictions, so they were giving their own Kali Yuga benedictions. May you be able to mix drinks just like your father. I don't know anything about it, but you know, you get these shakers and you put in, well, lemon or a cherry or something like that. You make a big show. Is that how they do it? Something no one knows here. So that benediction was recited to me. I didn't know what to make of it, you know. Because my mother didn't drink. So the whole point is, if you have discrimination, you're crazy. In fact, discrimination is only good in terms of financial affairs. Otherwise, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do. So the formerly miserly Brahmana is saying about his youth, his money, his strength. He says, I feverishly squandered these assets in the useless endeavor for more wealth. And then he gives the tragic utterance. Now that I'm an old man, what can I achieve? He realizes the facts of life. Old age is upon him. What's he gonna do? His money can't buy back time. What can an old guy like him accomplish materially? So he's looking at his situation from that point of view. Materially, from the material point of view, I'm finished. I wasted my youth, I wasted my money, I wasted my strength. So the question is, do you want to lament like that? I was talking with my mother, who's pushing 92 now, and she was talking about the days when she was young. So she looked at me and said, you know, I was a fox. I wanted to say something like, well, where did he go? I didn't say anything. I know I've learned, you know, say those kind of things. But she looked at me like, seriously, you know, it was a fox. Now, the grip of old age is tight. The Bhagavatam is teaching us not how to be miserable and negative. Oh, who wants to think about being in the grip of old age? Indeed, the Bhagavatam teaches you to see the whole universe in the grip of time. But people think that's negative. But discrimination means to be able to see what's going on and aspire for a different kind of happiness. Why say negative? On the material plane, everything is negative because everything is in the jaws of time, the grip of death. But on the spiritual platform, something else is going on. So you say that this is negative because You lack information about the platform of eternal optimism, which cannot be on the material plane in terms of your body and mind. So the Brahmana, the formerly miserly Brahmana, asks himself a question, and it's a smart question to ask. Why must an intelligent man suffer by his constant vain efforts to get wealth? Why? Indeed, this whole world is most bewildered by someone's illusory potency. In other words, he's looking at human existence, he's looking at history and saying, what's going on? Humans are making the same mistake again and again. Why? Why can't they see? Remember what Bikshu Gita Swami says at the beginning of second canto? Who knows the verse? Pashyannapi napashyati. You're sufficiently experienced with what's right before your eyes, but you don't see it. So the formerly miserly Brahmana is reflecting, thinking deeply, what's going on in this world? Everyone is so bewildered by some kind of illusory energy that belongs to someone. This is intelligence. His prior spiritual training is now coming to the fore. You can see it emerging. So he continues to underline the point about the grips of death. For one who is in the grips of death, what is the use of wealth or those who offer the wealth? Sense gratification or those who offer it? Why? Because all that kind of activity causes one again to take birth in the material world. But how much do we have that concern about taking another birth in the material world? You cannot be concerned out of ignorance, or you cannot be concerned because you'll go wherever Krishna wants to go for his service. But those are two different states of consciousness. Just like the cat holds a kitten in her mouth and also a mouse in her mouth. It looks the same from the external point of view, right? Both the kitten and the mouse are in the mouth of the cat. But you can know for sure that her kitten and the mouse are having a completely different experience. Still, from the external point of view, it's all the same, right? Similarly, for devotees, death looks the same as the death of a non-devotee. But you can be sure that the experience is completely different. So now, the former miser is becoming joyful, even after such devastating losses. No family, no wealth, nothing. This reminds me of a true story of one lady who had it made. She went to Cambridge University in the UK. She married a man from Oxford. They were both top researchers. had beautiful children. They were on a holiday in Sri Lanka, beach holiday in Sri Lanka. Everything was glorious. The family was so happy. And that was the time when the tsunami hit. What year was that? Does anyone remember? Something. Without warning, her whole life was turned upside down. She lost in the tsunami right before her eyes. She lost her husband and her 2 children. Somehow or other she survived. The waves carried this one that way and the other one that way, and somehow or other she was swept away by the tsunami in a way that she was able to survive. But she watched her children and her husband finish before her eyes. And so she tells an extraordinary story of how she had to battle with the extreme depression. Her family had to keep her, her parental family had to keep her under constant watch because she wanted to kill herself. It was just too much to bear. The emotional load was too much, she couldn't handle it. She had everything, and then gone in a pinch of time. No warning. Holidaying. These things happen. I think a couple of years ago, there was a lady at the beach in Northland, a Kiwi lady, with her 2 children, and her 2 children were in the water, and she was on the beach, on a beach blanket or something, watching the children, and she texted her husband, who was a businessman who had done a business trip to San Francisco, and she texted him, "Oh, what a day of paradise. Beautiful weather. The children and I are at the beach." The next moment, she sees one of her children be overcome by, what do you call it, a king wave? It's an abnormally high wave. The mother jumps in to save her child. She's actually somehow able to push the child toward the shore, but the waves kept coming and she didn't have enough strength left in her body, and she perished. Just maybe 180 seconds after sending the text message to her husband. "Oh, this is paradise, everything is wonderful." So we hear these things, but some other we think, "Oh, that won't happen to me." We have this unconscious sense of invincibility, or that things will work out. And amazingly, this former miser is becoming joyful. And he's expressing that joy in 3 verses. He's saying that by the Lord's satisfaction, I've attained this devastated condition. Would you ever say so to them? And the reason he gives for his saying, "I've attained the Lord's satisfaction," is that he's become indifferent to material existence. And that indifference is a boat to cross the ocean of samsara. Now, he's not just some kind of stoic or someone who just tolerates, bites his tongue, and that's it. No, he's seeing the tragedies as indicating that the Supreme Personality God is satisfied with him and is rewarding him with indifference to material existence. Indifference means he doesn't take it so seriously. He knows it's all a passing phenomenon. So he's saying that with joy. That makes you wonder, is he faking it or does he really have some bhakti realization? You have to start somewhere in your spiritual development. So, all right, a beginning devotee may be theoretical. Sometimes you hear brand new devotees, giving the rah-rah talk about the mature world. Mature world is hellish. That's all right, that's nice in the beginning, but they need to get some knowledge and realization. I remember in the 60s when the temple in Boston just opened. It was either the second or the third or fourth of Prabhupada's temples to open. And so the news reporters came to see what is this strange group. And so the devotees could only express the level of their finesse and realizations at the time. So they did that in a genuine way. So the newspapers just printed what the devotees said in their very disarming and sincere way. The new residents of such and such address in such and such a part of Boston are a very exotic, indeed strange looking group. And they'd say, it's a hellish world without Krishna. The Prabhupada was very pleased. Yes, you have said right. He didn't chastise them or, you have no media expertise. You're supposed to say something complimentary like, oh, we're actually just the same as you. We just dress differently. He was happy that he knew they were expressing their level of realization, what they had heard from him, and according to their capacity, they were just repeating, it's a hellish world without Krishna. This Brahmana is genuine in his realization. He's not just speaking theory or new devotee rah-rah talk. He's speaking from deep realization. He says, we can chant, this is text 28, can you get it? It's going to take too long. Okay. Nunam me bhagavan stushta sarvadeva mayo hari yena nito dasham etam Nivedas chat manaplava Nunam me bhagavan stushta Sarvadeva mayo hari Yena nito dasameta. Navedas chatmana plavaha. Nunam me bhagavam stushta. Sarvadeva mayo hari. Yena nito dasameta. Navedas chatmana plavaha. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Hari, who contains within himself all the demigods, must be satisfied with me. Indeed, he has brought me to this suffering condition and forced me to experience detachment, which is the boat to carry me over this ocean of material life. The Brahmana understands that Krishna has rescued him from the ocean of repeated birth and death. His material life has been devastated. Deprived of that opportunity for material life, he's not lamenting, I lost it, I lost it. In fact, you heard he's lamenting, why did I waste my time? Why did I waste my money, my strength, my youth? Why? Maybe we would be lamenting the opposite way. Oh, Krishna, why did you do this to me? I lost this, I lost that. But he's lamenting for all the time and energy that he wasted. Being deprived of his miserly wealth, he's now detached. And what is awakening in his heart? Transcendental knowledge. So he's speaking joyfully. I'm gaining intelligence. I'm gaining real insight. I'm happy. As for material existence, I'm indifferent. And I'm riding that boat of indifference as I cross over the ocean of samsara. So he joyfully gives his affirmation about what he's going to do. He says, if there is any time remaining in my life, I'll just live a life that matches my real self-interest, and I'll remain satisfied within the self, if I have any time remaining. And so he says, may the demigods show their mercy upon me. Not that he's worshiping the demigods for material benefit, but he's saying, you're devotees of the Lord, you're agents of the Lord. Give me your blessings to attain the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As for how much time he has left, he gives the evidence of Maharaj Katganga, described in the second canto Bhagavatam. He was fighting on behalf of the demigods, and when that was finished, they said, you can have whatever benediction from us you like. You pleased us by fighting the asuras on our behalf. You can have whatever benediction you like. Of course, the Devas can't award freedom from material existence. So Katganga, what did he ask for? Tell me how much more time I have left to live. And the demigods replied, It's interesting you asked that question. You've got 1 moment left. So immediately, Ganga Maharaj took shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead and attained perfection. Showing that if you're that serious, you can do it in a moment. Now you might say, well, that's an extraordinary example. In 1 moment, he attained perfect bhakti. All right, it is an extraordinary example, but at least you can do it in 1 lifetime. What do you say about that? Oh, I know. Some things I gotta go through. Some things I gotta have, you know. Then I'll be peaceful. So this is part of the joyful conclusion of the former Meister. He's expressing that I've gotten mercy by what's happened to me, the devastation of my wealth, property, and family. Lord Hari must be satisfied with me. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would give himself as an example of that. He'd say that the big astrologers in India had said that he was meant to become one of the wealthiest persons ever in India. But Krishna had another idea. Astrology and devotees, especially a devotee of the highest caliber, it's tricky. Krishna's independent, and he can show that toward his devotee however he likes. So astrologers said that about Srila Prabhupada. He was meant to be one of the richest men in India. And indeed, Srila Prabhupada explained that his plan was always to carry out the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who told him when he was in his 20s, go to the Western world and teach knowledge of bhakti in English. So he always had that in mind. Even though it seems he didn't act on it till 40 years later, he was always thinking about it. His idea, his plan was to make a lot of money and then go preach. Because he thought, who will listen to a poor Indian? But if I'm wealthy, then people will take me seriously. So he wanted to do it as a wealthy person. There was never any question of his not carrying out the order of the spiritual master. But he wanted to do that as a wealthy person. But he said, Krishna and I had a disagreement. Krishna wanted me to do it as a poverty-stricken person. And he said, Krishna won the disagreement. Very intimate expression, realization. He came, in fact, a week or so in September is the celebration of Srila Prabhupada's coming to the USA. He came with nothing, and Krishna gave him everything. So this former miser is joyful now. Lord Hari has brought me to this suffering condition and forced me to experience detachment. And that detachment is the boat to carry me over this ocean of material life. Bhakti is a strange thing, it seems, isn't it? You're joyful and thanking Krishna for taking everything away. We're probably thinking, okay, Krishna, first give me what I want, and then we can discuss whether I'll be thankful about your taking it away. But first, give me what I want, right? This is why we need purification. We're actually misers. We have no idea what is real wealth. We're so attached to the temporary material phenomenon, the temporary material thrills. We're suffering due to insufficient knowledge. We spoke the other night about how our attachment to material fulfillment is because we lack sufficient knowledge. It's the proof that we're tiny. We don't know much. It's like you're asking one of the little kids, what is your goal in life? You don't expect any serious answer. Sometimes you get a serious answer. When I was in Auckland a few weeks ago, Dina Dayala's and Gopinath's son, he's 5 years old, he came up to me and said, "Can I ask a question?" Okay. My question is, how do you stop unwanted thoughts from entering the mind? You're 5 years old. Don't you worry about that more. No, I didn't say that. But he was very serious, you know. How do you stop unwanted thoughts from entering the mind? But normally you don't expect anything so profound from a little kid, because they have limited knowledge. So we are like tiny little tots in the material cosmos. We think we know how to enjoy, but actually we're suffering from insufficient knowledge. And so we begin to rightfully wonder, there's some kind of illusory energy operating. Somebody's energy. One of the ladies was saying to me, well, she said, if men know that when they partner with one of us ladies, they're going to have to work hard and basically do what we want, why do they sign up for that? I said, I thought of a good way to answer. I said, I guess it's those female charms. Well, it's a intelligent question. If they know, they're going to have to go through all this. Because she was explaining to me how the female dream, as she saw it, these are not my ideas, by the way. The female dream, as she saw it, is to have a guy who does exactly what you want, but at the same time he's strong and powerful. It's a total contradiction. It's schizophrenia, you know? If he's a toy dog, that means he's weak, you know? But somehow there's this dream, not that the ladies are only those with dreams, and men have their dreams too. But we're just talking about one side right now. So if you want a toy dog, do this, do that, yes, yes. And at the same time, you want someone who's strong and resolute, and the two don't go together, you know? So you begin to wonder, what's going on with this world? there's some kind of illusory energy operating in it. Even if you know, you still act in a certain way. As Shukadeva Swami says, Pashanati Napashati. You're sufficiently experienced. It's right before your eyes, but you don't see. It's Lord Krishna himself who is relaying this whole account of the former miser, who's now going to become a Bikshu or renunciant. So we'll end with Krishna turning the page of the saga, and we'll go into the next phase next time we meet. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Itya Bit Precha Manasa Ya Vantyo Dvita Saptamaha Unmucha Hridaya Grantin Santo Bikshu Abun Muni. Lord Sri Krishna continued. He's talking about the Brahmana, known as the Avanti Brahmana. His mind thus determined that most excellent Avanti Brahmana was able to untie the knots of desire within his heart. He then assumed the role of a peaceful and silent sannyasi mendicant. Unmucha Hridaya Grantin, untying the knots of desire within the heart. Then there can be peace. And only when there's that kind of peace can there be real happiness.